Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get pre-orders of all the upcoming Force of Will sets, as well as releases of previous sets after they come out. TCGPrime.com, with over 100,000 Force of Will singles, as well as out-of-print boxes from the past, and TCG accessories, as well as fowlibrary.com, a wonderful resource for deck lists, article discussions, and more. Check them out at fowlibrary.com, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer patrons Shukong Fu, Vite Ramen, and Maxime Van He. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers. Welcome back after a long week of whatever game you've decided to play this week to your favorite ever live Force of Will vodcast. It's Office Hours. I am joined today by FoW Veteran and deck building genius Ken Tober. Ken, how are you doing today?
That is very polite. That is a very, very polite introduction. I'm doing great. Busy but great.
Yeah,
very
awesome.
To be here and
Awesome. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We're glad that you are here. If you want to chat with us in the chat, go ahead and hit it up. If you're interested in supporting what we do here on the channel financially, you can click that little join button down below. It's like a Twitch subscription and gets you access to all kinds of cool perks. You also should check out, if you're one of our FoW players, the link in the description for the Force of Will Festival 2 happening in November 5th and 6th in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The information is there. It is going to be gigantic. We're probably already at this point with more stuff on the way up to about $10,000 cash value wise in terms of pricing available, so it's going to be pretty cool. Hello, how can I help you? This is my wife. I'm currently live. How can I help you?
I don't care. I'm going to give you a kiss on your forehead.
Thank you.
Nice.
Everybody.
You have a fever and I'm worried about you.
I'm okay.
I'm giving you healing kisses.
Thank you very much. But we are here not to talk about Force of Will, but we are here to talk about Flawed, which is Ken's creation, Ken's new game that he is coming up with. Just to give you an introduction, if you don't already know who Ken is, Ken, why don't you talk about your little bit of your FoW history for us?
Sure. I mean, it all started season 1. We went, my wife at the time, girlfriend, geez, this is a long time ago. And one of our friends went to the first GP in Chicago. I want to say there were 4 that year or something. It was
there were 4.
Pretty slim set. Yeah. So we went to the Chicago one and, I made top 3, got the invite to Worlds. That was like my first, I mean, that was everybody's first time, really. I mean, that was early on. And then at that point, I was pretty hooked. Kept on playing, and I played in a lot of GPs, played in a lot of the ARG Nationals and like a lot of these different events. And, I did pretty well for myself. One of the little things we advertise is I'm currently invited for the 4th time to Worlds whenever that happens.
Yeah, eventually.
But we'll see. Maybe 5-ish years ago, I kind of stepped back from it a good bit. Like I haven't really been too involved with the community, but it's just a roller coaster, ups and downs. And, I still kick around with it some here and there. I've got some friends who still play. So it's always kind of been in the background.
Yeah, for sure. And you bring with you, going into this new game that you've been working on, that element of things that you liked and things that you didn't like from Force of Will to be able to bring into your own space. And I will get into it a little bit as to why I led off with the genius deck builder that you are, because that is Flawed. is just the craziness that is deck building with Flawed. And we'll get into that.
For sure.
So why don't you talk with me a little bit to kind of give everybody the run in, the 30-second kind of run in about what is Flawed.
Okay. This is the challenge question because
sure.
I am long-winded when it comes to Flawed. I
sure.
really struggle with the elevator speech, but basically what I did is I took some board game concepts. Ultimately, I took the playing card that we've all used and loved for years and years and years, and I deconstructed it. I turned it into 2 pieces where you've got a cardboard card and a clear sort of like overlay is what a lot of people have called
sure.
it. The in-game term is that it's an essence, and when you combine these 2 items together, you are creating like a final version where that essence is adding stats, adding abilities, changing color identities, doing all kinds of wild stuff like that. And that's the as you had kind of alluded to already, that's where the giant like deck building thing comes into play, because you're building your cards and then you're building your deck. So
Right.
it's this massive project.
Yeah, and I believe you and I had talked before about in the first set, and to be clear to everybody, this is going to be approached as a LCG kind of approach where it's like blocks of stuff, correct? Isn't that
It's going to be half and half.
Half and half.
I don't know how much you and I have spoken about this very recently, but we've done a lot of I'll call it market research.
Sure.
And the clear half is going to be the living half, where you just buy that, and the clear cards you're set up for at least like a 1-year cycle, right? You buy your entry level, it's going to be like full play sets, all the non-basics, like everything you need will be in there. You buy that one-time shot that'll play you for like a full year, but then the cardboard half will be a collectible card game, just like
cool
anything else would be. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, so to speak to that, you and I talked about how with the first set alone, with all the possible combinations, it becomes like 6,000 possible cards.
Yeah,
right.
I have to double check the actual count, because it like I'm always patching and editing and making these small tweaks, trying to get it ready for print. But I want to say it's actually pushing. It's like 6,860 or something like that right now.
It's a lot of cards. It's a lot of cards. That's a card game for people who like deck building.
It is.
For sure. One of the interesting things is, can you tell us a little bit about, beyond, and we'll get a little bit more into the specifics about like the building the cards and stuff, because I think that's a whole other conversation. But in terms of
huge.
the way how Flawed like plays, you said it's kind of like a board game but also a card game with deconstructed, like what is the vibe of a game of Flawed?
Okay, that's an awesome question. There are a number of things going on. First off, you've got all this like work that you put into your deck, right?
Sure.
All this fine tuning, all these iterations, all these minor adjustments, these tweaks, these like, the player who does a lot of play testing and a lot of balancing and a lot of research and a lot of studying is going to have this like very finely tuned deck that plays the way they want it to, right?
Sure.
And the player next to them is probably going to have something completely different. And that's like one of the big kind of like mission statements here, is to try to create an environment where like a little bit more expression, a little bit more of yourself can go into your deck.
Sure.
And you don't have to just net deck. And not that I've ever really had a big problem with net decking. I know that it exists. I know that it's a thing, but there's a lot of players who want to be original and not feel handicapped because of that. And inside of Flawed, you have the ability to make these, I like to say, like these lateral adjustments. If I take an essence off and I put another essence on, I didn't really make my card worse. I made my card different.
Sure.
So the like a player who wants to build their deck can really do that, right? And then when you actually get into the gameplay, like that's the preparation side.
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
The actual gameplay, which is probably more what you were talking about. The actual gameplay is pretty insane. It's a shared turn. You take actions back and forth, so it's super fast paced.
Yeah, I'm pulling up
very
the list
engaging.
Pulling up the list of actions right now. This idea of a shared turn. This idea of a shared turn. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So both players are going to play kind of simultaneously, and they're going to, like a ping pong match, they're going to go back and forth with actions. Okay. There are only 6 possible actions. You've got them on the. That's a snippet of our learn to play mat right there that we're going to have at MomoCon. But there are only 6 possible actions, and I take one action, you take one action, I take one action, you take one action. We're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right?
Yeah.
And these actions are realistically, they're very small manipulations of the game, right? Like just playing a resource into player, like making an attack with one unit or whatever. They're these small, tiny pieces of like tactical decision making, and then the next player sees what you did, and then they make one, and then you just do this back and forth, and it really makes it where like having a strategy, having a plan, understanding your deck the way that you built it lets you kind of go deep, right? I can think about these like multiple actions in a row that I'd like to take and like have this plan, and it's a lot of fun for the really like analytical gamer, which obviously, as you know.
you and I are both in that vine for sure.
Yeah.
So I will say it's very interesting to one of the things to people is you bring up this concept of, I can't remember exactly what the term is. It's initiative, I believe.
Yeah,
I believe it's the term initiative. So the interesting idea is, for those of us who are typical TCG players, it's like turn player, right? Like I'm turn player, I end turn, it's your turn player. This is a shared turn. So then the question becomes, okay, well, when the end of the turn happens, what happens? Do we just change whose turn first? The interesting thing, and in fact, one of my favorite parts about playing Flawed the few times I've played it with you, is the fact that initiative determines who goes first. So based on your playstyle, you could just be the person to go first each turn consistently. Which is very different.
We've got an entire slice of the color pie kind of dedicated to that. All of the dark cards do one of two things. They either lean into gaining initiative through either the essences have bonuses to initiative, or the cards themselves have like good speed scores / initiative scores, where like all the values on the dark cards are kind of looking at, I want to go first. And then they have this set of cards that have added text if you play them on action 1 right at the start of the turn.
Right.
So you've got this entire play style where it's just like, I'm going to go first. I'm going to play my one big hit right up front, and then hopefully send my opponent kind of reeling a little bit, and then, you know, gain my advantage by holding that initiative score.
Yeah, for sure. And so for those of us, you know, who are kind of wondering, okay, well, how do we win initiative, turn order, everything else? This is a it's a life-based game in a sense.
In a sense,
because you have also a customizable, which I think this is a cool crossover for players from FoW for sure.
Absolutely.
Is the shrines, is that
Shrine,
the typical term for it? So I have it up here right now. This is the Great Oak, the Fabled Guardian. It's an example of what a card in Flawed looks like, and it's your shrine. It is essentially your starting health. Not only is this kind of different based on the different, you know, colors or different everything else, you can also modify these with essences. So your shrine, or for FoW players, your ruler, is also incredibly customizable, which is very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to traipse on your terminology, but the shrine doesn't take an essence; it takes a shrine improvement.
Oh,
it's
sure.
a small differentiation. I just want to make sure,
an overlay of some
the only
kind.
reason I say that is literally version 1, like 3.5 years ago, there was no such thing as a shrine improvement. We were just slapping essences on these things, and like, if you had an essence that just made like an uber combat statted monster, you could like put it on your shrine. And we got away from that pretty quick. So, but yeah, the shrine is really cool. They're all designed in a way that they're meant to be representative of the factions.
Sure.
There's actually a decent amount of like lore and like some robust characters and stuff that I'm working on developing, and like, you know, making things that players and people will care about.
Yeah.
What you've got up here, the Great Oak, this is from the Earth faction. It's sort of like a holy site, and if I'm playing this as my shrine, my duty is to protect that. I don't want another faction traipsing into my territory and, you know, sacking my holy relics and stuff.
Right,
I want to
for
protect
sure.
that stuff. I care about that stuff, right? So, yeah, this is just one example. There's in the first set, there's only going to be one for each color, each of the 6 factions, but there will be the plans right now are to at least have one per color per set, and just like give people those options in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. And I do want to mention that you do have a Patreon to help with this project. And currently, right now, you sent me this picture of a potential Patreon exclusive version of the Great Oak. A picture here. I don't know exactly.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I was trying to remember which one you had.
So I'm gonna make this guy a big.
Let me think what this is called. This is the spring season promo.
Sure.
And this is for my patrons at a certain tier. I think they're the Epics and the Slayer squads inside of my Patreon. Anybody who joined back in, I think it was February or March, I'm not sure. Basically, it's a 3-month cycle. If you're a member that's here for 3 months, you'll get the promo. And this is going to be sent out in June. That this spring season just ended. But this is a really cool alternate art of the Great Oak. And this actually, like I said, this comes from kind of where the lore is, right?
Right.
The picture you saw originally had a big like sword kind of stuck in the roots there. And again, you guys all know I'm a Forceful player, so obviously I love me a good Arthurian legend. The sword you saw at the base of the tree was actually called X, and that is kind of our version of Excalibur. And same legend holds, you know, whoever can draw X out of the roots of the Great Oak will be the king. Generations and generations go by, nobody can get it out, and then this big sort of redneck knight from the Outer Rim comes in. He's called Griffin the Fourth, and he's just this massive hulking 7-foot tall monster of a man. He's just like, oh, all I gotta do is pull it out, easy. Snatches it out, but causes all this damage to the Great Oak, right? So this immediately causes a rift inside of the faction. There's like, you know, the very like loyal to the legend, loyal to the king side of things are like, oh, he's got the sword, he's king. The other half is like, dude, you just totally desecrated our relic. Like, you just messed up our sacred shrine. How can we follow you? And it just creates this like big like spiral of drama. And this featured promo art here is like Sand Sword, right? He's already pulled it out. You can see kind of the like damage done, the little crack in the earth, and like all that.
For sure. That's pretty cool that you're doing that. Yeah, I like the idea of encouragement through alt art stuff. You and I both know that I am a lover of all things shiny. So
I've played your cube. I'm aware.
yeah, that thing is pretty shiny. So yeah, it's cool that you're doing that and bringing on some really cool perks for patrons to get in on it. The end goal of the project is to be a Kickstarter, correct? So there's the Patreon supporting now, and then down the line it'll be a Kickstarter. I do want to pull up, just for people, because we've talked about essences quite a bit. I want to pull up this image specifically, kind of showing the idea of the essence, and it's going to be kind of shifted a little bit here. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So this clear overlay that gets slid over top of the card and then modifies all kinds of stuff. So talk about exactly this concept of card building. Can I just slap the most busted thing that I can think of onto the most busted card? Like, what am I limited? What's going on?
Great question. Great question. And I believe you and I touched on this a little bit when we did the demos, but this is an awesome question. I'm sure everybody's curious how it works. Set 1 has 140 base cards and 80 essences. Okay. Every base card and every essence, they both have a value on them called card construction cost. And they are a relative. It's not like a direct one-to-one sort of like number crunch, but there's those card construction costs are kind of a relative rating of the power of either half of the card. And whenever you go to make your combination, you say, I want to put this card and this essence together, those two values have to add up to 6 or less.
Sure.
So to your point, if I've got like a card that's already rated at a 6, I'm really only going to be able to put the most basic, realistically do nothing essence on that card. It's maxed out. It's doing everything that it possibly can. On the flip side, there are some cards that have values as low as 0 and 1, where you can put every essence is basically a valid choice.
Sure.
And then you're getting those really wide, options for what can go on them. But at the end of the day, you end up with realistically about, your deck of 50 cards. It's a relatively average power level within each of those 50 cards, because you're going to get some percentage of its potency from the card, some from the essence. And when you put it together, a really savvy player is going to try to make their deck as many like 6 totals as possible, right? You want to really optimize. You're going to have as many 6s as possible, but sometimes you don't. And that's okay too. But that's kind of how it all kind of pans out.
Sure. So here's the question. So we're talking about costs. We're looking at, I look at one of the cards. I'll pull up Drown for an example.
Sure.
Right? Drown has this cost in the upper right corner. We'll talk more about card anatomy here in a second. So obviously, by looking at this is a resource-based game, right? A card has a cost. It's printed in the upper right-hand corner. This is 2 and I believe 1 blue, so 2 and 1.
Yep.
So kind of converted cost of 3 just from this. And I know that some essences can modify cost of cards, correct?
Yep. Absolutely.
So how are we paying for this stuff, Ken? How are we playing cards?
Great question. Anybody who knows me from way back knows that I've played Magic since about 1995. Magic the Gathering is the game that got me started. It's where I met my wife. It's the reason I'm a gamer, right?
Sure.
I think there are a bunch of people in this chat that probably had similar experiences. Maybe some of us were lucky enough to jump right in with a great game like Force of Will or one of these other types of games. But back in the day, you had to struggle to find your resources, right?
Right.
Obviously, modern game design has evolved past that. There have been a number of games, WoW TCG, Kaijudo, Duel Masters, Force of Will, a number of games who have implemented systems that allow you to more readily play your cards.
Right.
Flawed card game did not ignore that. In fact, I would argue that it has gone in as hard as humanly possible, because every card in your deck, you've got a 50 card deck. Every card is both the card you see here, Drown, but then it also performs the service of being a resource. And the resource type is dictated by the essence that you put on it.
Sure.
So when you are building your deck, you are balancing stats / abilities that I want to put on the card from the essence, but you're also balancing color, dynamics, where how many of this color do I need? Do I have enough of this? Am I going to be able to play my cards? Drown's a great example, because Drown is such a potent removal spell that you are rarely choosing to use this as a resource. You're almost always going to play Drown as Drown. So Drown just gets like an essence to make it as powerful as possible in most decks, right?
Right.
Because I'm rarely going to make the choice to play it as a resource. But at the end of the day, yeah, you open up with your starting 6-card hand, and you've got, if you're coming from a Force Wheel perspective, I've got 6 stones in my hand and 6 spells in my hand. It's just a matter of sequencing. Okay, this one's going to be the stone for turn 1, so that I can play this card on turn 1.
Sure.
On turn 2, I'm going to draw. Yeah, sure. This is my stone, so I can play like this. And you're planning that curve out around the combination of cards / stone that each card kind of represents.
So it kind of takes the element of so Duel Masters had any card as a resource,
Yeah.
but locked it to, like, you're just trying to unlock the Civ, right? Everything has a neutral cost. You just have to
Any
have the
fire
Civ.
card was a fire resource.
You're right. Yeah, it was just like, do you have at least one fire card in your card pool? Cool, you can play fire cards. Great.
Right.
This seems to me like it's kind of taking that similar kind of concept and applying it with a color specific restriction. So you know, if I put a card with a water essence, that counts as one water resource. I put a card with an air essence, that counts as one air resource. I'm assuming there's probably essences that will make production better than might cost more. Good old special magic stones.
Yeah.
Which
there
is
are
cool.
dual stones, and those are balanced by the card construction cost.
Yep.
There's a bunch of very interesting essences. When I look at the game as a whole, when I kind of just like sit there and like top down the entire design, the essences are my favorite part, like bar none. It's the most unique and most like interesting part of the game because it just opens up your options.
Yeah,
You just get
absolutely.
crazy with whatever you want to do. And they don't disappoint. Like I said, there are 80 in the set. 80 out of 80 are hyper playable. Like you will
Awesome.
use all of them in some deck somewhere.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I like that idea. I also know that you and I have played a couple of games together. Not necessarily before we got card artwork. You and I got to play a little bit. And so I will say that it does feel like the resource system feels good. It feels like the resource system works really well in terms of like the shared turns. It flows. It flows pretty quick. It can be, I will admit, that there are certain people who might seem a little bit daunted by the sheer number of cards that you can potentially build. I will admit that you and I, when we first talked, were like, hey, can you build some demo decks? Because I don't know what I'm doing. Which is fair. But I will say, having played it, that it is an excellent, it scratches a competitive like gameplay itch that just FoW doesn't. So I'm all being the FoW channel, right? It's like, I don't necessarily want to say go play a game to replace FoW. I would say that Flawed is very easily a game that you could play alongside, especially with the way that you're having designed it. Like FoW and Flawed feel different in terms of a game, which is great. They take elements that are really nice. Flawed takes a lot of really good elements of gameplay that in playing FoW you will pick up on pretty quick, but also has enough unique stuff to say, oh, okay, cool. Like this is pretty great. I do want to talk about we've shown a little bit of the card art here. We've shown a little bit about the turn order here, and some of the stuff is been talked about on your Patreon, and you've done like demo deck games and stuff, and you have a Discord server that you can access through the Patreon that I highly encourage people to go check out because you can get plus games on it. You've been working on stuff for Tabletop Simulator to try it out, so like there's a lot of ways to be able to try it out now, which is awesome.
Get involved. Yeah, exactly.
Get involved for sure. I do want to talk about, as I pull up Earth's Elite here, I do want to talk just to show off some more artwork.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about where this project, we talked about a little bit about the Kickstarter. What is the release into the world, into the where does Flawed go post-release? Like, what does that look like?
That's a huge and awesome question. I probably have a solid 75% of the answers, but
that's fine.
but we'll start there. First off, huge props to Earth's Elite. This is literally our like flagship card. I love this artwork. I love this card. This is a common. This will be easy to get, for the record. Just understand that I am looking at this from the perspective of a player more so than anything else. And something I should say before we even necessarily talk about release is that it's a 140 card set. That sounds like a really small set, but it is 140 cards of just pure gas. I don't have to put filler in my sets because 140 cards is actually 7,000.
Yeah.
I can just print banger after banger after banger, and that's the plan. Like when you look through, just like you just open up like one color of this first set of Flawed, you're looking at literally just 20 cards, and it's just like, oh, I can play that. Oh, I can play that. Oh, I can play, and you're just like, how do I even trim this down and make a deck? Like it's honestly, you did say it's a little daunting, but you start to figure it out. You start to see what goes together, etc. All that being said, I am right now kind of in the process of getting quotes, figuring out shipping, importing, all that type of stuff. My goal is to be able to put together, you know, a good business plan, a good understanding of what it's going to cost me to get this in the hands of players, and have that on Kickstarter by December of this year. That's
great.
That's what I'm pushing. That's what I'm pushing for right now.
Cool.
So we've been using the Patreon to kind of like get this artwork up and running, to have these demo versions, to have some actual printed materials and some substantial, you know, stuff to be able to go to MomoCon. We're going to go to PAX Unplugged. We're going to go where we can and start getting this in front of people and start, you know, showing it off, because we put a lot of work in this. It's been over 3.5 years for me. And kind of get that, you know, that momentum going a little bit so that we can have hopefully a very successful Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Assuming that happens, I do want to have some different concepts for organized play. One of my favorite things about playing card games ever was the old Magic the Gathering Play Rewards program, where you basically just showed up. If you were playing the game, if you were involved in the game, if you were, you know, logging matches at your local FNM, if you were going to Grand Prix, if you were playing in Pro Tour qualifiers, whatever you were doing, it all said, hey, I'm a player. If I do this a bunch, the company was kicking you back some sweet swag. They were sending you some alternate art cards. They were sending you some shiny promos. I really want to figure out how to make something like that work.
Sure.
I think that is one of the best ways to promote a community, right? Like I don't want to create a game that only caters to the top 8 players. I don't want to, I mean, even having been in plenty of top 8s myself, I don't think that those are the guys who matter. I really don't. I think that you have to have something for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to look at having something like that. I do want to have, you know, like real events. I want to have, you know, a Grand Prix type circuit, you know, events that people can go to and they can have, you know, a qualifying type feeling, stuff like that. My biggest thing that I want to promote for organized play is sort of a 2-pronged concept. We kind of alluded earlier that there are 6 factions inside of the game. Which faction you pick is dictated by the shrine that you pick. They're all associated with, you know, one of the cultures that your deck is kind of representing, whatever. I want the factions that the players play to matter in the scope of the development of the game.
And I say a little bit of L5R feel.
A little bit of L5R feel. But I say that in 2 ways. Number one, I want to start by creating an environment where hopefully the factions can be fairly evenly represented. I don't want people to fall in love with the Dark Shrine and the Earth Shrine and ignore the other 4 or whichever, right? So one way I'm going to do that is to look at your like GP level type events and have a prize structure that is based on what faction you're representing.
Oh, okay.
So yes, everybody's vying for top 8, top 16, whatever. There will be a payout for that, but there will also be a payout. Let's say, for example, the Water Shrine is really unpopular right now, and whoever shows up with the Water Shrine, the best Water Shrine player gets 50th place. That guy just won a prize because he showed up he represented his, you know, his culture, his people, his shrine, and he was the top performer. I'm gonna give him some prizes, right?
Yeah, that's interesting because Kaijudo did a very similar thing that honestly was one of the things that I loved about that community of like you picked a civ that you were fighting for, and so there were like hats and bags and artwork and all that kind of stuff that was kind of designed to be like the Kaijudos exactly of like I'm fighting for the fire civ, I'm fighting for, you know, that. So that's really cool that you're bringing that in too. Absolutely. That's a really cool idea.
Once you incorporate that and you somewhat even out the playing field so that all of the factions are getting some representation, you can then come on the back half of that and say, okay, the Dark Shrine like has won the last Grand Prix. You know, I can use that to inform some of the design choices going forward. Or okay, let's say we get really to the point that we're you know, we've got Grand Prix, we've got qualifiers, we get to the Worlds level. Like, let's look at the actual like metagame at Worlds and say, oh, you know, this particular color is becoming too powerful from a gameplay perspective, but we can echo that in the story and in the card development by being like, hey, I mean, we're a nation at war. We've got like these 6, you know, civilizations that are not really seeing eye to eye, but they're not stupid enough to sit here and watch one of them just run rampant and kill everybody. Like, obviously, if these guys are winning, like let's you know, let's make
Sure.
a set that you know is informed that way. And I think that can be a really fresh way to, first off, you know, get people showing up. What they do matters. You know, people
Right.
are involved in the production of everything at that point. And it can really tie, like I said, the story starts being told by the players, and then the story drives the design. So
Yeah,
the players
absolutely.
kind of have that impact.
So here's an interesting concept. The nature of, and I bring this up because, interestingly enough, this has become a concept that has been discussed in FoW as of late. Is this idea of interaction banning, where it's not necessarily that I'm banning a specific card or controlling a
Okay.
specific card, but it's saying like your deck cannot merge this way, right? So I don't want to outright ban a card because like it's not necessarily like oppressive in the overall game state, but this particular combination is maybe too much. So that being said, you literally have a card game that's all about creating
Yeah.
interactions. So what, in the idea of balancing, and obviously you said like set design and everything else, you know, that can be informed and everything else. What is the perspective of how do we approach controlling things that maybe run rampant, either as a combination or a specific essence or anything else?
That's an awesome question, and it's actually a point I forgot to mention to you ahead of time, and I'm
Sure.
so glad you brought it up, because this is one of the things that I'm most proud of. I like to mirror Magic a lot. It's a big game. You can reference it. It's easy, right?
Right.
Magic has had a rough couple of years lately. They have had a lot of bannings. A lot of people have lost a lot of money, etc.
Yeah.
For Flawed, my hope, and I suppose I can't guarantee this right now, sitting here
Sure.
today, but my hope is that I never have to ban a card, because I can ban a pairing. I
Sure.
can just say, this card cannot be played with this essence. It's kind of like what you alluded to, where
Yeah.
you break the deck up by saying these two cards can't be together. I don't even have to go that egregious with it. I can just
Sure.
say, this card and this essence can't go together. This will kind of kick this particular play style out. Nobody's collectible card has to lose all its value overnight because I decided to ban it. It's still a strong card. It's still playable.
Sure.
And I can monitor the competitive format in a very unique way. If a card gets really, really out of control, if a card is super, super strong, it's appearing in every deck, whatever, I could just say, okay, well, it's these 20 essences are banned. The card's still powerful. This card's still going to be good. But I was able to essentially like live patch it, right? I was
Sure.
able to patch a card game without having to errata, without having to do anything. Your card is still there. You just technically, you have to go look up the list, which is kind of annoying. New players are going to struggle with it a little bit, but by the time they get to that competitive stage,
The hope is that they would be informed. Yeah.
Exactly. They should be informed by that point. And I hope that my genuine hope, and this is actually a big part of like the whole design, is to try to make it where people can be invested in the game. They can buy their cards, they can win their sweet swag, they can get the promos, the alt arts, the foils, whatever, and they can like cherish that and hold on to it and play it and not have to worry about the implications.
Sure.
There's actually really, really funny. I shouldn't even say funny. There's just a kind of a stunning kind of anecdotal thing that I can tell you about this process, and part of how we figured out that it should work brilliantly. We were testing, this was like years ago now, and there was a base card that had a very low card construction cost, right? So it could take a ton of essences. And the particular essence that it was being paired with in this like one archetype was pretty ubiquitous. Anybody who's playing this like grindy version of a deck was like, this is my finisher. I'm going to put this essence on it. And when the time comes, I'm going to land this thing and it's going to do everything I need it to do. Because of that perspective, they were playing it as a singleton. They just needed one in the deck to eventually get, right?
Right.
Over the course of playtesting, I said, man, this like feels kind of bad that this card is getting like the same essence all the time. We should tweak it in some way. Obviously, this was early on. We were doing a lot of tweaking. And I said, okay, what if we take the card and increase its CCC by 1 so that essence isn't available to it anymore? people who wanted to play that card in the deck immediately started playing it as a 2-copy or a 3-copy because the new essence didn't give it the same staying power. So if they wanted to close the game, they
They
actually
had
needed
like
more
multiple
copies.
copies. That's
And
very
if
interesting.
in live play, if I had just banned that essence combination, your card would have gone up in value.
Yeah.
I would have banned a card and it would have gone up in value immediately.
Yeah.
which is crazy to
Yeah,
think about.
for sure.
Like there's no way that makes any sense. But
Yeah.
it's literally happened like right in front of us. I'm just like, wow, like that is just stunning.
Yeah. And that's cool. Just to answer a couple questions here in the chat. Viz, FoW themselves aren't talking about it. Like we don't know what's on the ban list or anything else like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, like we're still waiting to see what the next ban list is. There has just been talks among the Force of Will community of like, it would be cool if this particular interaction didn't exist without us having to lose a card. So to clarify that, to your point.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
TCG Prime, like Kathy said, there is a Flawed card game YouTube channel. Gameplay footage is not up yet. There is the Learn to Play stuff, which is great. Yeah, the full game's on TTS, which is awesome. So definitely lots of options to take that. And you can check the links to both the Flawed Facebook page down below as well as the Flawed Patreon down below and go support it. If you don't want to do that and you want to at least check it out, let's talk about MomoCon because you're going to MomoCon here this coming weekend. Tell us a little bit about what's going on. There's a lot.
So much. Yeah, it's been a crazy couple weeks getting this all together and ordering things and etc. We are going to be there. We've got one of the indie game developer booths. It's booth 123 there. You can see it on the flyer. I've got a handful of the alpha playtesters, I guess you would call them. My wife Kathy, she's one of the big helps, one of the devs behind the scenes, kind of helps with a ton of the digital stuff and getting things ready. Couple of the people, like I said, the alpha playtesters and stuff, and we're going to be set up there all 4 days, Thursday through Sunday. We're going to be running demos first and foremost. We've got some official demo printed like half decks, like learn to play type decks that are going to be, we're hoping to just let people sit down and play games with us and be on the edge of the booth, just kind of running those and giving people a chance to check it out and really see what a game feels like. Because as much as we've talked about it, almost everybody who sits down and starts playing ends up playing like 2 or 3 or 4 turns. They get into it and then they have that aha moment where they're like, oh man, like my action matters because the next action I'm going to do like causes this chain reaction based on if you do this and then if you counterattack and then you just get that like you just fall into it and you're just like, oh, okay, I see where we're at now.
Yeah, for sure.
And like that experience to me is one of the richest things to like watch a new player just like, sit up in their chair and be like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. So we're gonna be running the demos. We've got a giant wheel that you can spin. I'm reluctant to call it a prize wheel because we're not really giving out prizes, but it's like a pick your faction wheel.
Sure.
We're gonna spin it, and it's got each of the 6 factions on it, and whichever faction you kind of land on, we've got a little printout that talks about some of the flavor of each faction and gives a little bit of background on what's going on. And then we've got some free stickers that we're giving away for each faction. So somebody ends up as a light character that we're going to let them each get a sticker for whatever color they are. We're doing that. And then we've got some different swag that we're going to be selling. We have an exclusive card. It's actually the Great Oak. Same card, but it's kind of small on the screen.
It's kind of fun to see. You can see the MomoCon banner there.
Yeah, I had the artist. She's actually a local artist here in Georgia, who did both versions of the Great Oak that we saw earlier. I asked her, I was like, hey, if I wanted to do something for just MomoCon, like, what did you think? And she came up with that. She said, why don't we just add like a, kind of like a cutesy little bit of a banner, like a little bit of shout out to like, hey, I was at MomoCon 2022. I was there at the beginning.
Yeah,
I got this card type thing, and we've got, I think 1,000 of those that we're going to be selling, 900 standard copies, and then actually had the artist sign 100 of them.
Awesome. That's pretty great.
So those are going to be available for sale. And then we've got some art prints and some bigger vinyl stickers that are a little bit nicer and some different stuff like that. And we're just gonna be hanging out. Like I said, I'm gonna be literally sitting at the booth all 4 days, every hour that's available.
Have food. Don't
talking to people.
Take it from someone who's done the con circuit. Food breaks. Takes a break.
Yeah. Like I said, my brother's in town. He's helping. He's gonna be delivering me like Wendy's or something.
You gotta have food, man.
He's the official. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. We're all set up just doing that and hobnobbing and doing what we can to just get the word out there. Like I just want to have this. I want people to play it. The crazy thing is the Patreon has been super successful. I've got some very generous people in there. a lot of my close friends, and then even if a few people who I'm not, super close with, but people have been kind of getting involved, and nothing can replace like actually playing it though.
Sure.
That those first couple of games, when you really like start to see what's going on, and you really deep dive into that gameplay, and you get kind of lost in it, like it's an irreplaceable, kind of moment in time.
Yeah, for sure. Also, and like you said, not only are you going to be at MomoCon, but you're going to be at PAX Unplugged, which is another a more up northish kind of event. I think sometimes it's in different spots. I don't know exactly where PAX is this year.
I want to say we read it was in Pennsylvania again.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
We're waiting for a lot of that info. We've been poised, like we're like we want to get involved, but like nobody's announcing anything.
Yeah, for sure. Have you guys considered going to Gen Con at all?
So Gen Con's totally sold out this year.
Totally sold out. That would make sense.
And it was like one of the things was the cross section with MomoCon being very close to where regional. We're in Georgia already.
Sure.
So we don't have to worry about the transportation. The setup was a lot easier. Cross section with the fact that they actually have an indie game developer section, which is
absolutely
competitively priced for somebody in my position. Really just made it the perfect storm to be our first stop. And then when you look kind of down the project map, PAX Unplugged just lines up with when I want to start the Kickstarter. So
yeah, for sure, that works out.
PAX Unplugged being so big on tabletop gaming and board gaming, just that's the crowd that I want to speak to, is the people who want to sit down and play with each other,
a game,
have a game and just do battle,
Yeah, for sure. Well, wish you guys best of luck. I'm really excited to see what comes out next. And like I said, I've played a few games of Flawed, and you and I have chatted a lot about it. So wishing you luck in this. My father has done board game design. I've done behind the scenes help on game design, and you and I have had some conversations about Flawed. So like, it's always cool to see people try these new projects and bring something new to the trading card game world. The idea, again, a little daunting with 7,000 cards, but a very cool concept that I think people will truly enjoy. So wishing you the best of luck. Yeah,
thank you. No, I appreciate all of that. One of the big things, I know that this is a subtopic that we keep coming up on, is that it's like, it is, if you're gonna sit down and try to treat it like your traditional like Force of Will set, where you've got 100 cards and you can basically toss like 80 of them out of the way and just look at 20 cards and say, how does this affect my deck? How does this affect my metagame, etc.? It's obviously not ever going to behave like that, but it also isn't as insane as, let me sit down and look at 7,000 cards.
Yeah, for sure.
Because most of the times I'm going to say, I want to build a deck with like this shrine or this epic unit or this color or this concept or this strategy. And I can very quickly trim that number down from 7,000. Let's say you just cut out like 3 or 4 colors. You're already, half the cards are gone, right? Like, and that happens very naturally as you kind of learn the way to build the deck the way that you want to build the deck. A lot of people in chat are asking to see cards.
Yeah, well, specifically Kathy is telling you to hold up a card. Just to kind of show people exactly what, the picture is one thing, but to see kind of what an essence looks like and everything else, just to kind of wrap us up here. I think this will be a good kind
these are the demos that we're going to be playing with at MomoCon. Let me find our favored son. I've got an Earth in here somewhere. There he is. I'm probably going to be tired of seeing this guy. So let's see. There he is.
Yeah, there he is
with the essence on him, and you can see it all comes together pretty nicely.
Yeah,
it's not
it does.
Really that crazy. And then when you take it out, this is going to show up on camera. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that shows really, really well. Yeah, that's very cool.
That's card plus essence, and that all goes together, boop, just like that, and in the sleeve, and I mean, it's ready to go.
That's awesome. For sure. Yeah. Standard size sleeve?
Yep.
Great. Just
standard size sleeve, standard size Euro poker. It's like 63 by 88 or whatever.
Sure.
Is what we've been going with. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I mean, anything else that you want to hit out here at the end? We haven't really had any kind of any other questions come in, but this has been a really good conversation.
I've been trying to watch the chat. Kathy is just crushing it. She's just answering like
Kathy's working hard. So
yeah. Like I said, she's always on the clock. But the one thing we didn't mention is we do have a website. It's pretty fresh. It doesn't have a ton on it, but if you just go to flawedcardgame.com, you can actually go. The full card list and essence list are posted there, so you can just go and kind of kick around and see what set one looks like, and idea some of the concepts, some of the tropes. The massive downside to that for anybody brand new is that the official rules book, rules page is not updated yet, and that's kind of a work in progress right now. That's the next thing.
Yeah.
So if you're really struggling with how to parse the cards and understand what you're looking at,
Coming
soon. It's coming soon. Yeah, it's the best I can say. But other than that, yeah, we've got the website, we've got the the Facebook and the YouTube, all the social media outlets, and like just being part of the community. Even just clicking on Facebook and like seeing that we exist and watching our updates. And I mean, we always post all of our like art spoilers and like our content, like whatever we have, it's always going through all those various channels. So it's just a way to stay in touch.
Well, we look forward to seeing more out of it. Looking forward to those of you who are going to be able to make it to MomoCon, or those of you who might be watching after the fact. Hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about this FoW Veterans new project, this new endeavor that is Flawed. Hope you check it out for sure. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, this has been myself, DMO73, and I've been joined by Ken Tober and Kathy in the chat in the background saying class dismissed. Have a good night, everybody.